Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! So I work at a small retail store in a beach town in California where we get a somewhat big turnout of tourists, especially during the summer. Now to the story. So this specific day I was placing t-shirts on some shelves. In walks the entitled tourist and her spoiled child. I hear the kid, "Mommy, I want that shirt. It looks so cool." To which her mother says, "Whatever, take it and let's go. We have a long drive ahead." Once the kid grabs a shirt, they begin to walk at a fast, suspicious pace before making a dash to the entrance. Just so you know the layout, the entitled tourist and her child and I are at the back of the store, and the entrance is probably 30 feet away. Protocol for shoplifters in our store is that one employee at the top of lungs screams, "Shoplifter!" and the nearest employee must stop what they are doing and run to the entrance before the shoplifters escape and lock the doors. So I yell out, "Shoplifter!" To which the cashier, let's call him Alan, manages to reach the entrance and locks the doors. The entitled tourist starts asking, "Let us leave. We have a long drive and we want to be home before sunset." Alan just tells her, "Ma'am, open your purse. We just caught you and your child shoplifting." The entitled tourist, trying to insist they did nothing wrong, asks for the manager. And the manager, let's call him David, saw the whole thing go down. To make things better, he has an iPad that is synced with the cameras. So he pretended he knew nothing about what happened and asked, "What seems to be the problem here?" And the tourist responds, "This idiot and this other idiot in the back are accusing me of shoplifting. I paid for this shirt." And David turns on his iPad and says, "Oh, is this what you're referencing?" And he shows her the footage of her and her child shoplifting and trying to flee the scene. The face on the tourist went from smug to, "Oh, I messed up big time" face. And David tells her, "Well, I'm going to give you two options. One, you give me the stolen merch right now and I won't call the police, but you will permanently be banned from this place. Or two, I call the police and you will be leaving this building in handcuffs." The entitled tourist, knowing that she lost, gave David not only the shirt the kid tried to steal, but some sunglasses and a hat she had shoved in her purse as well. David tells her have a nice drive home, to which the tourist and her prattle child storms out. I live in a cooperative. This means reduced rent payment in exchange for building upkeep and services. Someone cuts the grass, someone shovels the snow, and so on. My job is parking enforcement and management of the public computer lab of our residents to use, since a good chunk of them are low income and can't even afford internet service. So way back in September, I saw some exposed video on doorbell camera footage and the freaky crap it captures, like the one of the lady standing there for 15 minutes holding a knife but never knocks on a door or anything. So I bought expensive doorbell cameras for myself, my sister who lives in the same condo building as me, and my parents who are about an hour away. I also bought the service for person detection and cloud storage. All that premium stuff totaled $1,200. Please recall that it's September at purchase, and these are Xmas presents. So buy return window. The company gave me 3 months of premium service free, so there was no real loss of service from September to December, while they were sitting in a closet. Fast forward to 3 days ago. I'm installing the doorbell camera on my door and I've already run the wireless inside. So the last step is only a 5-minute job. 2 screws, 1 hole, and feed the wire through. By sheer coincidence, during this 5-minute window, my neighbor, who unfortunately is one of the frequent users of the computer lab, is taking their dog out for their duty. We say our pleasantries and that's it. Before they are even inside, and before I can even finish setting up the software for it on my phone, I have an email from the condo board saying public-facing cameras are not allowed in the building. Clearly, I know who complained. I staunchly defend my purchase, stating that I can disable the motion detection and keep it so it's only active when someone physically presses a button. But to no avail. They were adamant on not having it and not allowing it, even threatening eviction on me over a few texts of me trying to save my purchase. Nothing rude or anything, willing to even post them publicly. I decided to leave it up overnight because it's like 9 p.m. at this point and I don't want to rip it all apart. I wake up the next morning and there is a note taped over the camera with a copy of the bylaws. It says, electronic devices with cameras facing public spaces are not allowed. So I tear it all off, as to about it for a few days, until I remember that every laptop in the computer lab has at least one camera on it. It's a public space, huh? I have remote control over these because I work in IT and know how to set that stuff up. I remotely log every machine. A mosey downstairs and my neighbor is trying to mash the keyboard trying to figure out why it's not working anymore, and suddenly I walked over, unplugged it right away and removed it along with every single laptop out of the lab. I left behind a note saying that due to condo bylaws, any electronic device with a forward-facing camera is not allowed. I advised them that someone complained about my doorbell camera, and as such, I am just enforcing the bylaws. I was sitting in my wheelchair outside the grocery store waiting for my ride to come pick me up. It was a hot day and I was feeling a little restless, so I decided to pass the time by watching the comings and goings in the parking lot. And that's when I saw her, a woman in a suit and sunglasses, pulling her car into the handicapped spot right in front of the store. She didn't look disabled to me, but I couldn't be sure. I decided to investigate. I wheeled myself over to her car and said, "Excuse me, but you can't park there. That spot is reserved for people who are disabled." She looked down at me with a mixture of disgust and superiority. "I'll only be a minute. I'm sure you can wait," she said dismissively. I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman. "You can't just take advantage of people like that," I said. "It's not fair to those of us who really need those spots." She was getting agitated now, and her voice grew louder. "I can bark wherever I want. Now get out of my way," she snapped. I knew I was no match for her physically, but I wasn't going to let her bully me. I pulled out my phone and called the store manager to report her actions. As she stormed into the store, I watched her go with a mix of anger and sadness. How could someone be so selfish and uncaring? A few minutes later, I saw her car being towed. She rushed over to the tow truck driver and started screaming at him. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was clear that she was furious. Then, to my shock, she reached into her purse and pulled out a gun. She pointed it at the tow truck driver and yelled, "Stop right now or I will shoot!" The driver's eyes widened in fear. He quickly jumped into his tow truck and sped away, leaving the woman standing there with her gun. But as he rushed off, she fired a shot at his vehicle. The sound of the gunshot sent people running and screaming in all directions. I was terrified. I had never been this close to someone with a weapon before. My hands were shaking as I called the police and reported the incident. Within minutes, officers arrived on the scene and arrested the woman for threatening the tow truck driver with a weapon. They instructed her to put down her gun and lay on the ground, holding her own weapons against her as a precaution. The entire police department was on the scene, making sure the situation was under control. The woman was given a hefty penalty for her crimes. She was charged with assault with a deadly weapon, threatening a public official, and illegal use of a firearm. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison and was ordered to pay a large fine. I never got the woman's way of thinking in that situation, to be honest, but I will never forget the entitled and selfish way she treated me and others. It was a reminder of the daily challenges and injustices that disabled people face. A year out of school in the early 1990s, I procured a job as a business analyst for a large family-owned tech company. This business was located in the booming heart of technology at the time and was very profitable. As tech took off, over the next decade, the company thrived and remained family-owned. What was a rich family and company became exceedingly wealthy and valuation/net worth in high 9/low 10 figures. The family that owned it was quite neurotic, very moody, and had a reputation as very ruthless, greedy when it came to financing, deal-making, employees, and so on. I truly believe this is what held them back from ultimately becoming a household name as a company. As I progressed in the company, I gained more and more face time with the owners. I worked on some projects directly with ownership that really paid off and gained me even greater access to their inner circle. Now, like a lot of people at the time, and particularly those who worked in tech, I was heavily invested in tech stocks. I discussed some of my investments and gains with ownership as casual conversations, though investing had nothing to do with my role in the company. That is until one day in late 1999, when the owner came to me and asked me if I would invest some of his personal money. He wanted me to take big risks to see if they would pay off using $1 million of his personal money. I was a bit hesitant, but still being in my late 20s and wanting to prove myself, I said I would. I asked for a written agreement where they acknowledged this wasn't my role in the company, it was a personal matter between the owner and me, and to document my compensation for this side arrangement, 20% of all profits. All this same time, and by working in the industry, I started to notice the weakness associated with a lot of tech companies. They just weren't living up to their hype and stock price, and some seemed like they were starting to run out of money. I had no inside information, just a strong sense of which companies were struggling based on my computer in the business. Based on this sense, I started using both money and the owner's money to short tech companies just after the new year in 2000s. For anyone unfamiliar with shorting, it means if the value of a stock decreases, the value of the investment increases. I had a few long positions, but my overall position was very short. Since the owner wanted big risk and big reward, I used his money and obtained leverage or margin from the financial institution where I maintained both his and my trading accounts. The accounts were separate, but both under my name. Again, I documented this and gained consent. Well, both my account and his suffered some moderate losses in the first 2 months of 2000 before the bubble began to burst and both accounts, but his in particular, began to skyrocket. Ownership's pettiness. In June, the company began to suffer a downturn. We were still profitable, but since we provided tech services and products, we were not immune to weakness in the broader market. I had not informed the owner of my short strategy. He came to me one day and asked how his money was doing, saying he suspected it was way down like the general market. And to his surprise, I informed him that while we were still had some money tied up in options, puts, and shorts, but based on the positions I had closed, there was $1.35 million in cash sitting in the account that belonged to him. I still had a bunch of open positions which, if memory serves, were worth about $1 million on that date. But the positions I had closed had yielded $1.35 million in cash, just sitting in his account, which was in my name, by the way. The owner, either through ignorance or lack of attention, said, "Great, $1.35 million. Fantastic work in this down market. Will you please wire it to me?" I responded that I would, but will be taking my 20% of the $350,000 profit, or $70,000 before wiring him the $280,000. I also reminded him I still had open positions that had yet to pay off or close, but I didn't state the amount. He once again appeared not interested or comprehend the open position statement. but instead totally focused and became incensed about my rightful claim for $70,000. He went on and on about how times were tough. I should be grateful for a job, particularly at my young age, and the entire $350,000 was necessary for him and the company. I knew this wasn't true based on my position within the company. Worse, this was my first time personally experiencing the greedy and corrupt nature that served as a basis for ownership's reputation. Now comes the revenge. Since after 2 separate conversations the owner did not seem to grasp that the open positions would yield at least some income and thus additional profit, I decided not to mention it again. I sent him back the entire $1.35 million and continued to manage the open positions to the best of my ability. And here is the kicker. The owner never brought it up again. He seemed to think the $1.35 million payment was the entire value of the account and never understood or remembered that open positions still existed. He never asked for records, tax documents, or any time of audit or financials. Given the fact that he was dishonest with me, I didn't feel the need to disabuse him of that notion. Ultimately, after a bit more net gain, I covered all of the shorts and exercised all of the options puts in this case for an additional $1.8 million. I worked for the company for 3 more years and the owner never asked about it during my tenure, after I gave notice or cents. I know it's a bit crass and even shady as hell, but given his dishonesty with me over the $70,000, I felt justified in keeping the additional $1.8 million. I paid taxes on the gain, long-term cap gain. I went on my way with a fantastic nest egg. Nobody has asked about it since, and I have only told the story to a few people, and even then only after the statute of limitations passed. The final ironic cherry on top of this sundae is that during my remaining 3 years I gained greater influence with ownership and position within the company because they considered me loyal for giving the $1.35 million back and not making too much of a stink about the $70,000 profit. Little did they know I got the better of them. The company eventually folded due to family disputes, but my understanding is that ownership walked away in a very good financial position. They likely could have been a much better and greater company had they not practiced the same dishonesty they showed me with their vendors, clients, and employees. Update: there have been no negative consequences from the below and no consequences other than a few people DMing me with incorrect guesses. In fact, the remaining family members have reached out a time or two about some consulting work. They have no clue. So this happened at Comic-Con a few years back, and it still brings tears of laughter to my eyes to this day. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan, so I decided to dress up as Hunk. So as I went around, I got a few O's and Ahs, but then someone dressed as Leon Kennedy from Resident Evil 4 came up to me and asked me if I wanted to join him and his girlfriend for a photo opportunity with the other guests. I figured why not, since I was there alone and had nobody to talk to. His girlfriend was dressed up as Ashley in her pop star costume for that game. Now the thing you need to know about that costume for the character is that it shows a lot, and I mean a lot of skin. So as me and the others were taking photos with a crowd that included everyone from Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th to Johnny Lawrence, we hear an angry screech filming from the crowd, and next thing I know, I see this plump middle-aged woman getting all up in the girl dressed as Ashley's face. And here is what the confrontation looked like. "Excuse me, young lady, what are you wearing?" Ashley, staying in character, "Leon! Leon, help!" "Oh, shut up. Don't speak when I'm speaking to you. Don't be so rude." Mind you, she was up in the girl's face. "Why are you dressed as a total tramp? There are children here, and you're tramping around in rags." At this point, Ashley is crying, and there is a crowd around her, so I decided to step in and defend her. Hey, come on now, that's not necessary. The entitled mom looked pretty taken aback when she looked at me. I don't know, maybe it's cause she was looking at someone dressed in full tactical gear with a gas mask before she turned on me. Mind your own business, freak. Your friend here is setting a bad example for my little girl and making all the women look bad. Finally, Leon steps in to defend his girl and picks her up. Oh look, your boyfriend is here. How can you let her dress up like a tramp prancing around here? There are children here. I want you to leave now. What do you have to say for yourself? I guess a guy dressed as Leon was so devoted to his role. So you know what he said? No thanks, bro. And that's when the entitled mother lost it with a battle cry that sounded like you were strangling a clarinet player. She charged at Leon, ready to slap him. Just then, 6 stormtroopers came around the corner and saw her prowling with Leon. Now, the stormtroopers were armed with Star Wars Nerf guns, so they looked at each other and at the entitled mom, and they got down on their knees, aimed and fired at the entitled mother. The darts bounced off the back of her head and back before she got off of Leon and ran away with the stormtroopers following her, still shooting her. I helped Leon up and looked at Ashley, and she was no longer crying but laughing. And the whole crowd was actually laughing. The rest of the day was fine and we didn't see the entitled mother again. I said goodbye to the cosplaying couple and left the convention. So yeah, that was my first encounter with an entitled mother. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.